Engine sounds great.
Ooh,
Rio
especially
sounds
Engine.
awesome. Zonka perfectly.
The only anime I watched that wasn't in Japanese were in French.
Hey.
Takemichi! Hey everyone, today we're reacting to how a good dub surpassed a perfect manga. Let's get it.
Gachiakuta's dub is perfect because it ignores the original. It went viral several times for its use of English slang, but the real reason it's so popular is because the actors all adapted the characters. So instead of feeling like
True, that's so true. Like all the clips that went viral are all in English dub.
is because the actors all adapted the characters. So instead of feeling like a boring script reading, the English dub feels like a genuine translation of the original story. But that creates a surprisingly confusing question. Is it better to accurately translate anime or to change them? That's why in this video, I'm gonna discuss the popularity of Gachiakuta's dub, talk about the difference between copying and adapting, and explain why good dubs need to make stuff up. And the best place to start is by talking about the many lines from this guy.
Yo, Rudo, you got some pretty good game for a worn-out, foul-mouthed, butthurt, ratchety, short-stacked sphere, right?
This is Jabber, specifically the English dub Jabber. And this is one of the first times Gachiakuta's dub went viral, mainly because of all the jabs he makes at Rudo, but also because those jabs just aren't in the manga. In the anime and manga, Jabber just makes a simple comment, but in the dub, Jabber's voice actor decided to ad-lib those insults. Which brings us to our first big question. Why do so many people like this version of Jabber when he's not true to the source material? Well,
because of the accuracy of Jabber's character, of course.
That's just it. This idea of true to the source material is already a flawed premise because it assumes the source material is absolutely perfect. In fact, even ignoring the dub, the Japanese sub and the manga both fail to fully express the personality of this character. And I know that second part sounds suspect considering it's the manga, but that's because the original Japanese doesn't really capture one important part of Jabber's character, and that's the fact that he's black. Even before the anime got announced, fans were pretty sure that Jabber was supposed to be a light-skinned character. This only continued as we saw more of him in the anime, and then when we hear the way he talks and the way he uses slang, it becomes pretty clear that Jabber is a black character. And it's not like this is an accident. Series creator Kei Urena deliberately places black characters into her story. When there was a recent controversy over the use of blackface in the stage play, it was made clear that Urena told the producers not to use blackface, which they ignored, and even
clearly
requested that they hire black actors, which they ignored. It's also important to know that Jabber's voice actor met Urena and asked her how he should approach the character, and Urena's words were basically, have fun. Translation, she gave him free rein to portray the character how he sees fit. So it's no accident that Jabber sounds like this in the English dub, but it's not like his voice actor naturally talks like this. Zeno Robinson, a name you should recognize from Hunter in the Owl House, has been in the business for years and has an impressive range when it comes to his characters. In fact, Hunter and Jabber couldn't be more different, but everyone agrees that Zeno's portrayal of the character makes perfect sense, and the way Robinson portrays Jabber is perfectly in character. The best
That's literally what I said earlier, and I totally agree.
Example of this is when Jabber beats Zonka and he starts rapping and dancing.
Mix it with a bit of the hallucinogen, let it sink in, now he's tweaking!
Jabber's rapping isn't part of the manga, so you could argue that Robinson and the dub team are straying too far from the source material. But this is why this idea of sticking to the source material isn't perfect, because in this case, the Japanese anime would never be able to portray this part of the character as genuinely as the dub. Even ignoring that the Japanese actor, who weirdly enough also voices Takemichi, is from Japan.
Takemichi? When is the next season of Tokyo Revengers coming out already? I've been waiting since 2023. come on.
And in Not America, this particular use of slang and rap naturally sounds less authentic in Japanese when compared to English. And it's not even about the slang or the rap. It's about having the right portrayal for the right audience. Because if we apply this conversation to the other characters, I was actually surprised when I heard the Japanese voice for Corvus. Truthfully, I think he sounds fine, and I think that particular portrayal works better for a Japanese-speaking audience. But a better example is Semiyu. Now, in the original Japanese, I like Semiyu's voice, but then I heard her in the dub, and I was like, okay, now that's what I was looking for. Granted, she does sneak in some slang here and there, but when it comes to Semiyu, it really just comes down to her tone and the way she just naturally talks in character.
Engine got me up to speed on everything, so I know all about you. Where
That's what I'm looking for.
you're from, your potential, all of it. But I still need to see it for myself.
There's just certain subtleties to this portrayal of Semiyu that feel more true to the character. But that's the thing. I'm saying that as an English speaker that notices these subtleties. While a Japanese speaker might appreciate the English dub, those subtleties could easily fly over their head, which is why the idea that sub is always better than dub is kinda stupid. Because sub is naturally going to be better for Japanese speakers, and when done properly, the English dub is going to highlight parts of the characters that English speakers will appreciate but Japanese speakers might not understand. Now, don't get me wrong, there isn't some equation where giving a character rap lyrics or adding slang magically makes them better. Not unless you're Zura, that is.
やるなら今しかねえずらやるなら今しかねえずら
Actually,
Okay.
this is another reason why copying the source material to the T isn't always a good idea. Because one character that has a noticeable lack of slang is Zonka, a character who in the Japanese anime and manga has a very clear accent. But in this case, he uses an Osaka accent, or what you might refer to as a Chugoku dialect. Basically,
that's
he
interesting.
talks
I
the
didn't even realize.
way people from the south of Japan talk, as opposed to everyone in Tokyo in the north of Japan. Now, obviously, this is very specific to the regions of Japan and doesn't really translate to any English-speaking culture. The manga at least recognizes this by giving Zonka a southern accent, but in the English dub, they do away with it entirely. And it works, because the whole Kansai thing doesn't really translate to English because it has no relevance. So if it's not relevant, then it doesn't make sense to use it. The difference between this and the stuff with Jabber is that in Jabber's case, they're using slang that makes sense in English, not in Japanese. But in Zonka's case, we're cutting out slang, or at least an accent that makes sense in Japanese, not English. It goes back to this idea that the source material isn't completely perfect, and you have to portray the right adaptation to the right audience. That being said, in all seriousness, I don't necessarily think that the Gachiakuta dub is categorically better than the sub. While the
I watched Gachiakuta in Japanese, and the first time I heard Gachiakuta in English was in some clips on TikTok, and I guess it changed my opinion. But that being said, I think, unfortunately, I will watch the next season in Japanese. Just for the sake of it.
There are plenty of things I prefer about the dub. There's also things I probably like more about the sub. One example that stands out pretty clearly is Remlin. Remlin is a character that is implicitly understood to have an ambiguous gender identity. They don't dress or talk in a way that clearly makes them a boy or a girl, and the other characters only refer to Remlin as them or they. Now, when it comes to portraying this, I thought the sub did a slightly better job. The Japanese voice, for whatever reason, just sounds more ambiguous. The dub voice sounds like it could be either or, but definitely sounds more like a woman. But it's a very minor thing that really only stands out if you're like me and you're deliberately looking for it. Besides that one difference, I really don't think one of these portrayals is better than the other, and that's generally the case with a lot of anime, not just Gachiakuta. For example, I watched the Dandadan dub, and there's plenty that I like about it. I think the voices for Okarun and Momo are great. I think the use of certain teenage slang makes it feel authentic.
These dogs sucks!
But if you put a gun to my head, I honestly don't think one of these adaptations is better than the other. They're just different. I should also mention that I don't think English dubs are always better, and they're definitely not all on the same level. As much as we should give credit to their work in the final season, I am not a big fan of the My Hero dub. I'm also not crazy about the One Piece dub. For me at least, it's not a matter of English or Japanese or literal versus altered. For me, it's a simple question of does it feel authentic? And that's why I started this video with that question of translation versus adaptation. Because in most cases, an actor isn't approaching a character thinking, okay, how do I translate what this other person did? That's how you get some of the more awkward scenes in anime.
I will not let you destroy my world!
Generally, an actor simply approaches a character thinking, what are the lines and how do I want to make this character sound? That's why Zeno Robinson plays Jabber the way he does. He's very open about his love for anime, but I don't think he goes into Gachiakuta thinking, how do I translate the original Japanese? It seems pretty clear that he understood that Jabber is an unhinged character who also happens to be black, or as some might say, black-coded, so he portrays the character so that he comes off as completely unhinged and clearly black. Is it 100% accurate? Maybe not if you're going by the literal text of the manga. But when Jabber has dreads and everyone assumes he's black, and you have the creator telling Robinson keep doing what you're doing, the whole accuracy issue is kind of a moot point. But you would never get this kind of original portrayal of the character if we were 100% focused on the literal translations. This is the same reason Goku sounds great in the English dub, and we don't get what should be a literal translation of his country bumpkin accent.
You'd never guess they could stretch as they do and still keep their shape. Must be using some sort of advanced polymer. What do you think about that, boy?
Why do they have to expand so much?
Japanese sub is great, and generally speaking, I find it to have better emotional acting. But to take that and say you shouldn't watch English dub when there's clearly great work being done is just plain silly. The only people who are doing that are dark web weebs and elitists. The kind of people who actually remove dub voice actors from IMDb because apparently that doesn't make you a part of the cast. Bottom line is Gachiakuta's dub is awesome. Rudo sounds great, Engine sounds great, Rio sounds awesome, Zonka perfectly drops what should be a southern
everybody.
accent just like Goku. And of course, characters like Jabber, Semiyu, and Corvus are portrayed in a way that is genuinely fun and surprisingly accurate to the characters. So stop worrying about whether you should watch sub or dub, and just watch both. Because either way, you're definitely missing out.
And I literally just said I was going to watch the next season in Japanese. But honestly, the only anime I watched that wasn't in Japanese were Pokemon, Fairy Tail, and I remember a little bit of Beyblade and Yu-Gi-Oh! But in French. I know, guys, I know that's really bad. But at the same time, they were on TV in French. So after school, I would just sit down and watch them. You know, that's not my fault. That's what was available. But anyway, I hope you guys liked the video. Like, comment, subscribe, and see you in the next video.